Have you ever walked past a house and felt it before you saw it? That strange buzz under your skin, the sense that something inside those walls is watching you, inch by inch, as you go by. Tonight, we're not trading campfire legends or urban myths. We're stepping into real places, real houses, where doors slam on their own, where the air turns so heavy it feels like it's pressing on your lungs, and where, in the dead of night, you realize the breathing you hear behind you doesn't belong to anyone you can see. Entire families have broken apart after crossing these thresholds, never figuring out why. If you're easily scared, this might be the moment to back out, because tonight is darker and more unsettling than usual. But if you're still here, then you're one of us. Take a breath, hit that like button so we know you made it in, and let's begin. From the sidewalk, our first house looks perfectly harmless. Just a compact two-story home sitting quietly at 508 North 2nd Street in Atchison, Kansas. White siding, a modest front porch, curtains drawn in the windows. The kind of place where you'd expect to smell fresh coffee and cookies, not burned air and fear. But this is the Sally House, and for decades it's held the title of one of the most violently haunted homes in America. The worst part? It doesn't just let you leave. Sometimes it goes home with you. The story goes back to the early 1900s. A local doctor used the front portion of the house as his examination room and lived there with his family. One day, a frantic mother burst through the door carrying her 6-year-old daughter. Sally, the child, clutched her stomach, sobbing with intense abdominal pain. The doctor quickly diagnosed appendicitis. Terrified the appendix would burst before he could save her, he rushed the surgery and, according to the legend, started cutting before the anesthesia fully took hold. Sally's screams filled the tiny room. Her small fingers dug into the sheets, scratching until her nails broke. Her eyes, wide with terror, locked on the doctor's face, not with fear, but with betrayal. And then, suddenly, there was nothing, no more screaming, no more scratching, just a hanging silence that never really left. She died on the table. For years afterward, nothing official was recorded. Families moved in and out. Life went on. But in the early 1992s, a young couple moved into the house, and that's when the haunting refused to stay quiet. It began with little things: lights flickering without cause, phones losing signal, cold spots blooming in the hallway even on hot summer days. Then it turned personal. Tony, the husband, started waking up with fresh scratches carved into his chest, abdomen, and back. Sometimes 3 marks, sometimes more, deep enough to draw blood, as if something had raked its claws across him while he slept. They called in paranormal investigators, including teams from the 90 Seconds TV series Sightings. Cameras lost power in minutes. Audio recorders captured a girl's voice. A shadowy figure appeared on video, flitting from room to room, never quite letting anyone see its face. Visitors often describe the same chilling sequence. First comes the temperature drop, not just a cool draft, but a bone-deep, unnatural cold that doesn't belong in Kansas in July. Then, from the second floor, the faint sound of a little girl giggling. If you climb the stairs, the laughter stops halfway up, replaced by hurried footsteps running just out of reach. But the Sally House doesn't always say goodbye when you walk out the front door. Guests have reported strange malfunctions at home, objects moving on their own, and vivid dreams of a little girl standing wordlessly beside their bed. One investigator, staying overnight, felt a burning sensation on her arm at 3:15 a.m. She pulled up her sleeve and watched red scratches appear in real time, as though invisible nails were digging into her skin. She left before sunrise and never came back. Today, the city leans into the legend. You can tour the Sally House, even spend the night if you're brave or foolish enough. People still talk about dead batteries, objects thrown across rooms, and an overwhelming dread in the upstairs nursery, as if something small but furious is still trapped there. Some say Sally is a lonely child spirit, desperate for attention. Others whisper that whatever is in that house is not a child at all, but something far older, wearing a little girl's face like a mask. If you ever visit Atchison, you might be tempted to walk up those steps. Just remember, this is a house that doesn't just haunt your night. It might decide to haunt your life. Some houses hint at darkness, others wear it like a stain that never washed out. If the Sally House is terrifying because we don't quite know what's behind the scratches, our next stop is worse, because here, We know exactly what happened. There's no rumor, no blurry legend, just a crime scene that never really closed. On a quiet residential street in the small town of Villisca, Iowa, sits a white two-story house with lace curtains in the windows and a neatly trimmed lawn. If you didn't know, you'd think it was the picture of small-town comfort, the kind of place where someone's grandmother still bakes pies on Sundays. But when you step inside, the air changes. It feels thick, used, like it's already been breathed too many times. It feels like it remembers. It was June 10th, 1912. The Moore family, Josiah, his wife Sarah, and their 4 children, had spent the evening at church for a Children's Day program. 2 young neighbors, Lena and Ina Stillinger, joined them afterward for a sleepover. 8 people in total walked back to that house under the calm, summer night sky. By sunrise, not a single one of them would be alive. Sometime after midnight, while the town slept, someone slipped into the Moore home. The killer took Josiah's own axe and moved through the house in total silence. Josiah was struck first as he lay in bed. The blow was so vicious that the blade gouged the ceiling above him, leaving a scar in the wood that's still there. Sarah was next. Then, one by one, the children upstairs. It wasn't just murder, it was overkill. Investigators found that the heads had been struck again and again, long after death. Every victim's face was covered afterward with a sheet or piece of clothing, as if the killer couldn't bear to see what they'd done or didn't want anyone else to. Downstairs, in the guest room, the Stillinger girls were last. Evidence later suggested that Lena, the older sister, might have woken up. Her body was found in a strange position, hinting she may have tried to fight back, but in the end, no one survived. The house sat empty for long stretches. Owners came and went quickly, some leaving most of their belongings behind, as if they couldn't pack fast enough. Neighbors whispered that they'd seen lights flickering in rooms that were supposed to be dark, heard the sound of children laughing in the yard long after it was empty. Sometimes they'd look up and see a shadow pass behind an upstairs window when, as far as anyone knew, no one was inside. In the 1,990 seconds, the home was restored to its 1,912 condition. No electricity, no plumbing, no modern comforts. Just the house, more or less as it was on the night of the murders. That's when paranormal investigators started flocking there, drawn by the history and the whispers. Recorders picked up disembodied voices, soft, childlike whispers that seemed to answer direct questions. Video cameras caught strange orbs darting through the hallways. Some visitors felt a small hand grip theirs in the dark. Others left with burning scratches across their backs that they only discovered later, back at their hotels, staring into bathroom mirrors in shock. One seasoned investigator reported being jolted awake by the sound of footsteps coming up the narrow staircase. Slow, deliberate, one tread at a time. The steps stopped just outside the bedroom door. She held her breath, listening to the handle begin to turn. When she yanked the door open, the staircase was empty. The footsteps started again, only now they were going back down. The most infamous modern incident came in November 2014. A paranormal investigator, alone in the house after midnight, was found with a self-inflicted stab wound to the chest. He survived, but claimed he had no memory of harming himself. Police found no motive, no sign of a struggle, just a sudden act of violence and then silence, as if the house had reached out and nudged something dark inside his mind. Today, the Villisca Axe Murder House operates as a museum by day and an overnight experience by night. Some guests leave convinced it's just a tragic relic, a grim chapter of history preserved in wood and wallpaper. Others leave with the unshakable feeling that the house is still replaying that night over and over, and that they brushed too close to it. Some murders stain the walls, others sink into the foundation, and in Louisiana, there's a plantation where the past hasn't faded at all. It's still pacing the halls, waiting for the next person to turn the wrong corner. Some houses groan because they're old, others groan because something inside them is still moving. Leave the flat fields of Iowa behind, and the road pulls you down into the heavy, humid air of street. Francisville, Louisiana, where the trees bend low and the shadows never quite step aside. There, wrapped in centuries-old oak trees, draped with Spanish moss, stands the Myrtles Plantation. From the outside, it's a postcard. White columns, a sweeping veranda, a wraparound porch that seems made for iced tea and slow evenings. But cross the threshold, and you feel it immediately. The air is too still, as if the house has paused to listen. The light looks normal, but the shadows don't always seem to match it. Built in 1796 by General David Bradford, Myrtles has watched more than 2 centuries of life, death, and secrets drift through its rooms. Wealthy families lived here, soldiers passed through, and countless enslaved people worked and suffered here, their names never recorded, their stories stripped away. If any place has reason to hold on to echoes, it's this one. Locals call it one of the most haunted houses in America, and the stories cling to it like the paint peeling off its walls. The most famous legend is about Chloe, a young enslaved woman who worked inside the house. Depending on who tells the story, she was either caught eavesdropping on private conversations or suspected of betraying the family. As punishment, someone sliced off her ear. From then on, she wore a green turban to hide the wound. According to the legend, Chloe wanted revenge or survival. She baked a cake for the family and laced it with crushed oleander leaves, a beautiful plant and a deadly poison. Maybe she meant only to make the master sick. Maybe she miscalculated. Either way, the story says the plan backfired. The cake killed his wife and 2 daughters instead. When the other enslaved workers found out what she'd done, they turned on her, fearing what would happen to them all. Chloe was dragged out, hanged, and her body was thrown into the Mississippi River. Historians argue over whether Chloe ever existed. There are no solid records, no paper trail, but guests and staff swear they've met her anyway. A woman in a green turban glimpsed in doorways, standing quietly in the corner of a room, or reflected in mirrors when no one else is supposed to be there. In 1992, the plantation's owners took photographs for insurance purposes, routine shots of the property. In one image, between 2 buildings, there appears to be a faint figure wearing what looks like a head wrap. Experts examined the photo and couldn't explain it away so easily. And Chloe is only one of the ghosts said to roam Myrtles. There's the mirror in the main hallway, an ornate piece that supposedly holds more than reflections. On certain days, visitors say, small handprints bloom on its surface too tiny to belong to any adult on the tour. Sometimes the outline of a face presses faintly against the glass, like someone on the wrong side trying to get out. Guests sleeping in the upstairs bedrooms report waking to the sensation of being gently tucked in, blankets pulled up around their shoulders, only to open their eyes to an empty room. Others lie awake listening to footsteps pacing back and forth along the veranda outside, steady and deliberate, hour after hour, with no one visible when they look. One woman claimed she woke to see a man in period clothing standing at the foot of her bed, head tilted, calmly watching her. When she screamed, he vanished instantly, but the indentation on the mattress where he'd been sitting remained, as if his weight hadn't gotten the message. Even staff members who work here day after day have stories they don't tell in the daytime tours. One guide locking up for the night heard a door slam upstairs. She went up to check and found every door on the 2nd floor thrown wide open. Another watched a chandelier in the dining room slowly begin to sway in a perfectly still room, no open windows, no breeze. Skeptics say it's suggestion, old wood, and a love of ghost stories. But even the skeptics admit Myrtles has a different kind of silence, one that feels like it's listening back. It's not just the cold spots or footsteps. It's that twist in your stomach when you realize the house isn't empty and you're not the one doing the watching. Some spirits keep their distance. Others step closer, close enough to share your breath. And in a small New England farmhouse, one of them isn't content to stay inside the walls at all. It prefers to follow people home. Some spirits stay put. Others learn how to whisper through walls, wires, and memories. If Myrtles Plantation feels like a house that's listening, our next stop is a house that never learned how to stop talking. Some houses whisper. This one never learned how to stop. At the end of a quiet tree-lined road in Harrisville, Rhode Island, stands a weathered 18th century farmhouse. From a distance, it looks like any other old New England home, wood siding faded by time, a sloping roof, a wraparound porch that creaks with every gust of wind. Up close, though, the stillness doesn't feel peaceful. It feels expectant, like the house is holding its breath, waiting for someone to open the door. Built in 1736, the house has survived nearly 300 years of storms, winters, and generations living and dying on the land. It was once part of the old Arnold estate, where families worked the soil long before the United States even existed. According to local law, not all of them left. The most infamous name tied to this property is Bathsheba Sherman. In the mid-1800s, Bathsheba was accused of practicing witchcraft. Rumors spread that she had sacrificed an infant to the devil, using the child as part of a ritual. No court ever convicted her, but the whispers stuck like tar. Over time, the story twisted. Some say that when she died, she cursed the land, vowing never to leave. One version claims she hung herself from a tree behind the house. Another insists she simply refused to move on, digging her claws into the property even in death. For most of its history, the farmhouse was just that, a quiet rural home. That changed in January 1971 when the Perron family moved in. Roger, his wife Carolyn, and their 5 daughters. The house didn't wait long. At first, the activity seemed like classic, old house problems. Doors swung open on their own. Small piles of dirt appeared on the kitchen floor overnight, no footprints leading to them. The smell of rotting flesh would drift through certain rooms that had been empty for days, only to vanish as quickly as it came. Then came the apparitions. Some seemed almost gentle. The spirit of a man in colonial clothes leaning against a doorway, the scent of fresh flowers with no bouquet in sight. The Perron girls even mentioned friendly presences that watched over them, but others were not kind. One daughter woke to find her bed slowly lifting off the floor. Another felt an icy hand brush her hair aside, like fingers testing her scalp. Carolyn took the worst of it. She claimed that one night, an unseen force pinned her to the floor. She struggled, unable to move, and when she looked up, she saw a woman's face hovering inches from her own, twisted with rage, eyes burning with hatred. Desperate, the family reached out to famous paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Lorraine, a clairvoyant, said she sensed a dark, territorial presence in the house, something fixated on Carolyn in particular. During one séance, Carolyn reportedly began speaking in a voice that wasn't hers, spitting out words she didn't understand. Then, without warning, her body was hurled across the room. The Perrons, terrified that the ritual was making things worse, begged the Warrens to stop. Skeptics say the story grew bigger over time. That fear, suggestion, and the age of the house turned creaks into footsteps and drafts into demons. But even after the Perron family finally moved out in 1980, the house didn't go quiet. Later owners reported doors locking from the inside when no one was near them, objects disappearing only to reappear in impossible places, and the heavy sound of something being dragged across the floor upstairs, even when no one was on the second level. One visitor described standing in the living room when she felt a warm breath against the back of her neck. Her hair lifted, as if blown by someone exhaling directly behind her. She spun around to an empty room, but her hair was still moving. In 2013, the Perron family's experiences were adapted into the horror film The Conjuring, propelling the house into global fame. With the attention came curious visitors and more stories. Phones that were fully charged would drain to 0% within minutes of stepping inside. Cameras refused to focus in certain rooms, as if the house itself blurred out what it didn't want captured. And some guests claimed that after leaving, they continued to hear knocks on their bedroom walls at night, or faint whispers just as they drifted off to sleep, like the farmhouse wasn't finished with them yet. Some houses hold their ghosts quietly. Others send them home with you as souvenirs. Leave this lonely New England road behind, and our next destination couldn't feel more different. A busy corner in sunny San Diego, where tourists buy candy and take vacation photos under the gaze of a house that remembers a hanging and never stopped watching the stairs. Leave the lonely Rhode Island farmhouse behind, and suddenly we're in sunshine. Tourists with ice cream, mariachi music drifting through the air, bright storefronts stacked with candy and trinkets. It feels safe here. Busy, loud. But on the corner of San Diego Avenue and Harney Street in Old Town, there's a house that doesn't care how bright it is outside. Some houses just get older. This one gets heavier. The Whaley house doesn't look like it belongs in California. It's a brick Greek revival home, red brick walls with crisp white trim, a tidy balcony facing the sun like it's posing for a painting. People take photos in front of it, buy taffy from nearby shops, wander through the plaza without ever realizing that the house, in its own way, is noticing them too. Locals don't just call it beautiful, they call it busy. The ground it stands on was already claimed by death before a single brick was laid. 5 years earlier, in 1852, a tall, rough drifter named Yankee Jim Robinson was executed here. They built a crude gallows over a wooden wagon. The drop was too short. When the trap gave way, the rope snapped tight, but his boots still scraped the bedboards. Witnesses said he swung there, choking, his feet dragging along the wood for nearly a minute before he finally went still. Thomas Whaley knew this when he chose the spot in 1857. He was a New York-born merchant who wanted to bring a sense of permanence to a frontier town. He built anyway. The house wasn't just a family home. It became San Diego's first commercial theater, a general store, and even, for a time, a county courthouse. Babies were born here. A child died here. A daughter took her own life here. Joy and grief got woven right into the floorboards. Thomas and Anna Whaley's infant son, Thomas Jr., died of scarlet fever. Not long after, visitors began talking about small, unsettling sounds in empty rooms, soft crying that faded down the stairwell, the faint jingle of a toy no one had touched. Later, their daughter Violet married young. Her husband abandoned her, and humiliation closed in like a fist. In 1885, at just 22, she walked up to the second floor, tied a length of cloth to a curtain fixture, and then shot herself in the chest. The blood was scrubbed away, curtains were replaced, but the house never forgot what happened on that landing. Ask the docents, and they'll give you the official encounters. Heavy, deliberate footsteps crossing the upstairs hallway when no one is there. The parlor rocking chair moving gently, as if someone has just stood up. The sharp, ghostly smell of cigar smoke in the study Thomas's habit, and a trace of violet perfume at the top of the stairs, like Anna still lingers there. Doors that lock from the inside, only to open smoothly moments later when a shaken guide tries the knob again. Cold spots that don't drift like normal drafts. They stay rooted in place, as if something is standing there. A lace curtain that slowly breathes inward when every window in the room is firmly shut. Then there are the stories with names. Yankee Jim seems to still patrol the staircase. Visitors standing at the bottom steps suddenly feel the sensation of a tall figure stepping in behind them, pressing into the exact line where his boots scraped during the hanging. Sometimes two people in different parts of the stairway freeze at the same moment, like they've both felt the same weight. A few swear they've heard the low creak of a rope in a house that doesn't hang ropes anymore. Inside the courtroom, yes, an actual courtroom inside the house, people report the sound of leather soles pacing and the phantom crack of a judge's gavel that isn't on the table anymore. On nights when the small stage is lit for historical reenactments, staff say they've seen a shadow sit down 2 rows in and never stand up, even after the lights rise and everyone else leaves. There's a photograph the guides don't always show, a long exposure shot of the upstairs landing. The banister, the oil portrait, the reflective sheen of polished wood, and the faint outline of a woman's skirt halfway up, like half a person caught mid-step where no one was standing. Skeptics say it's lens flare. The photographer, who'd spent a decade shooting interiors, kept that one frame and deleted the others. Phones die in certain rooms here. When they do work, they sometimes pick up whispers no one heard in real time. A girl softly counting in the nursery, a woman's voice close enough to the mic to move the waveform, saying just one word, "Don't." One guest, alone at the end of a late tour, reached for the banister and yanked her hand back, hissing like she'd touched a hot stove. "It's burning," she said, shaking her fingers. Moments later, everyone else laid their hands on the same wood. It was cool as stone. Time inside the Whaley house feels layered, like thin sheets of glass stacked on top of each other. Turn your head in the kitchen and you'll swear someone just slipped out of the pantry. Stand in the front parlor and feel the itch between your shoulder blades like someone on the stairs is watching you. Lean a little too close to the glass cases in the old storeroom and something leans back. Your reflection, or a face that doesn't quite line up with yours. On quiet afternoons, docents hear the clear ring of a piano key from upstairs. There is no functioning piano. On crowded nights, with visitors packed shoulder to shoulder, the house sometimes goes unnaturally still, as if it's listening to itself instead of them. Skeptics blame suggestion. Old town, old wood, thin plaster, and a century and a half of ghost stories. People bring their fear with them, they say, and fear happily gives them something back. But even the most practical staff follow rules they don't print on the brochure. They don't turn their back to the staircase when they lock up. They don't stand exactly where the gallows wagon once stood out of respect, they say. Just in case respect is a language the house still understands. And they never say Violet's name aloud at the landing after dark. The Whaley house isn't abandoned. It's curated, restored, carefully tended by people who love history. Maybe that's why the history here feels so alive, not because the past refuses to leave, but because the present keeps inviting it to stay. Step out onto the porch and color rushes back. Music, lights, laughter. You tell yourself it was nothing. Creaky floors, old wood. Then, half a block away, you smell cigar smoke. And there's no one around who's smoking. That's when you realize the heaviness you felt inside didn't lift when you stepped out. It matched your stride. Some houses let you leave with a story. Others send you away carrying something heavier. And in a quiet New England town, one last house waits with a crime so loud the echoes are still counting upstairs. Some haunted houses are built on rumor. This one is built on a crime so brutal it carved its name into history. Some crime scenes fade with time. This one just learned to breathe between the boards. At 232 2nd Street in Fall River, Massachusetts, stands a pale house with dark shutters, plain enough to disappear into the neighborhood if you didn't know better. You could walk past it on a gray morning and never give it a second glance, but the moment your foot touches the front porch, the air thickens. It feels like the house is holding its breath, waiting to see if you'll step inside. The year was 1892. Inside this modest home lived Andrew Borden, a wealthy but notoriously frugal man, his wife Abby, who ran the household with a firm hand, and his daughters Lizzie and Emma, still unmarried and living under their father's roof. Tension, they say, had been building for some time, but whatever was brewing under the surface finally boiled over on the morning of August 4th. Abby went upstairs first, to straighten the guest room where a relative had stayed the night before. At some point between smoothing the sheets and the slow ticking of the clock, someone joined her there, someone holding a hatchet. She was struck 19 times in the head. The blows were so vicious that blood splattered the wall and soaked deep into the carpet, creeping up the side of the bed frame. Later that morning, Andrew returned from his errands and lay down on the sitting room couch for a nap. He never got the chance to wake up. He was hit 10 times. Clean, brutal strikes to the head that split his skull and painted the wall behind him. 2 murders, 1 house, no witnesses. The investigation that followed gripped the nation. Suspicion fell on Lizzie. She was arrested, tried, and ultimately acquitted. No one else was ever charged. The case officially closed with no killer named, leaving behind a vacuum the house itself seemed eager to fill. The rhyme still echoes through American folklore. Lizzie Borden took an axe. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. The house has never cleared it up. It just remembers. Today, the Lizzie Borden house is both museum and bed and breakfast. The rooms are arranged to mirror how they looked in 1892. You can stand in the guest room where Abby fell, walk past the spot where Andrew took his last breath, and sleep in the very house where the hatchet fell again and again. Guests who stay overnight almost always mention the guest bedroom first. Some feel an abrupt drop in temperature, as if someone has just stepped in behind them. Others swear they catch a sharp, metallic scent on the air, like fresh blood, though the wood has been scrubbed for more than a century. In the sitting room, people report faint groans, as if someone is struggling to wake up, realizing they never should have closed their eyes. The couch Andrew died on is long gone, but sit where it once stood, and some visitors grow dizzy, short of breath, or feel the disturbing sensation of someone leaning over them, close enough to whisper, but saying nothing at all. At night, the house comes alive in quieter, more unsettling ways. Lights turn on by themselves. Floorboards creak in slow, steady patterns outside bedroom doors, like pacing. Back and forth, back and forth. A few guests have reported hearing a faint tapping on the floor, like the head of a hatchet gently touching the boards, testing its weight. Staff say the staircase is the most active place. It's narrow, and as you climb it, the guest room doorway comes slowly into view, the same angle from which a servant first spotted Abby's body on the floor. More than one visitor has frozen on the steps, swearing they saw a woman standing in the doorway, only for her to vanish when they blinked. Skeptics insist it's the power of suggestion. Everyone knows the story, they say. Everyone comes here already primed to be scared. But even people who arrive laughing sometimes leave pale, refusing to talk about the dreams they had upstairs. One investigator brought top-of-the-line audio recorders, expecting nothing but the usual hums and creaks. On playback, he captured a faint female voice saying a single word close to the mic, almost brushing his ear. Closer. 6 houses. 6 addresses where the walls remember more than they should. Some greet you with a jolt the moment you cross the threshold. Others wait until you're back home, leaning against your own bedroom wall, before they knock. So the next time you pass an old house with its curtains drawn tight, ask yourself, do you really want to know what's inside? Because once you know, you can't unknow it. Drop a comment below. Which one of these houses would you dare to spend a night in? And which one would you never step foot in, even for $1 million?